Hello everyone, welcome back to Happy Plate. I'm Jewel, this is Monza. I was thinking that since the Olympics, the Winter Olympics are coming to an end, that we could kind of look back in history and share some really weird stories about the 1904 Olympics. It was the first year that America hosted the Olympics, and it didn't go so smoothly. It didn't go smoothly at all. So we're gonna talk about more specifically the marathon in the 1904 St. Louis Olympics. Today we're gonna be eating some Jajangmyeon that's also mixed with some fire noodles for a little bite. And we've got some nice toppings here. So we have some egg, enoki mushrooms, and some shrimp cake balls, yellow pickled radish, kimchi, and some carbonara tteokbokki. Let's do first bites. If you've never tried Jajangmyeon before, I highly recommend that you do because it's delicious. Oh, look, it's steaming. Mmm. Mmm.
So good.
Seriously, so good. Take some mushrooms. A little bit of kimchi, some mushroom.
The whole mushroom just fell.
Second try. The yellow radish is nice and cool, so it like offsets the spiciness. Mm. Oh, let's try the tteokbokki. Tteokbokki. So this is a Korean rice cake, and it's cooked in a spicy sweet sauce, and this one specifically is carbonara, so there's also cheese in there. Oh, it has a bite to it. Mmm. This is like amazing right now, like no lie. All right, everybody, so let's talk about this bizarre year that the US hosted the Olympics for the first time ever. The International Olympic Committee actually originally awarded the Summer Olympics in 1904 to Chicago. However, that same summer, St. Louis just happened to be hosting the World's Fair. So St. Louis kind of forced the hand of the International Olympic Committee to award them to host the Olympics as well, because St. Louis secured a deal with the Amateur Athletic Union to host the track and field championship. So because they already had that, the International Olympic Committee were kind of like, okay, well, they already have the World's Fair going on. We might as well kind of combine it and just have the Summer Olympics in St. Louis as well. Good for St. Louis. They get it, right? So they're hosting, but people across the world were like, where's St. Louis? You know, okay, it's in the United States, but it's like in the Midwest. It was expensive, and it was just really tough for other countries to get their people to St. Louis. Not that Chicago is that far from St. Louis. So because of that, only 12 countries actually participated in the Summer Olympics, and 523 out of 630 of the participants were American. Wow. So let me just tell you, the Americans won big that summer. So the marathon took place on August 30th. Have you ever been to St. Louis in August? And it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It was in the 90s, and it was super humid. And the course that they set actually for the marathon was just under 25 miles, and it was like all throughout the entire city. So, and it was all like dirt roads. So there's like all this dust kicked up from the automobiles. There's people who are walking. There's horses that are kicking up dust. It wasn't just the weather that made it so atrocious, or the dust. The course itself was actually really, really tough. So there were 7 hills, and they ranged from 100 to 300 feet. They also wanted to kind of see if they could test people's endurance and their physical capabilities by limiting their hydration. So there was only 2 stops in almost 25 miles. So it was at the 6-mile mark and the 12-mile mark were the only times that you could stop and get water.
So the last half of the race, you got no water?
Basically, yeah.
Wow.
There's honestly, there were so many different stories that accompanied this marathon, but for the sake of time and me getting back to my food, I'm only gonna tell you 5 stories. So the first story we're gonna talk about is a man who was from San Francisco, so one of the US runners, William Garcia. He was found in a ditch unconscious because along his run, he had inhaled so much dust that it coated his esophagus and it coated the lining of your stomach, which, you know, the lining of your stomach and your esophagus is supposed to be moist, of course.
Right.
That he started hemorrhaging. So he was rushed to the hospital and he did actually recover, luckily, but he was very close to death. He almost became the first fatality during the Olympics.
Yeah.
So the next guy that we're going to talk about, this is story number 2, Felix Carvajal. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He was a poor mailman actually in Cuba, and he wanted to come to America and run the marathon in the Olympics. He didn't have a lot of like formal training or anything, and he didn't have money to come here actually. So he was like begging through Cuba like all his neighbors, and he would go house to house and beg for money, and he eventually raised enough money to get him to the States. So he left Cuba, he ended up in New Orleans, and then he lost the remaining of his funds that he had to get him to St. Louis during a game of craps.
Oh no.
But him losing all of his funds to get him to St. Louis did not deter him. He ended up hitchhiking the rest of the way, about 650 miles all the way to St. Louis. Once he got to St. Louis, he befriended some American weightlifters who actually put him up, and they fed him and let him stay with them. They're a very persuasive personality.
Yeah.
So he shows up to the starting line and he is dressed like head to toe in streetwear. And this is like 1904 streetwear, so he's not in like joggers and a hoodie.
It's like slacks.
Yeah, he has like long pants with like those laced up boots, and he has like a page boy like
Cap.
Yeah, cap on, long sleeve, blousey type, you know, shirt. There was another Olympic participant that saw him and actually came up to him right before the race started with a pair of scissors and cut his pants into shorts. Like at the knee into shorts, so he would at least be a little bit comfortable.
He should have won.
I know. Well, he did win 4th place though.
Oh wow.
Which is really good, right?
Like to die or go to the hospital.
Oh, there are 12 people finished.
We have 3 more stories. You just wait. So Felix, along the way, he got so thirsty and he had like nowhere to get anything to drink until, you know, mile marker 6 and 12. That was it. So he actually stopped along the way and found some. I read he found some apples. I also read that he found some peaches, but he was like, I'm hungry and I'm thirsty, and he's like, fruit is juicy, you know. He wanted to quench his thirst, so he had some fruit, and then he kept running, and then he had stomach pains that were so bad, so he lay down and he took a nap. And then after his nap he started running again, and he still won 4th place.
People were probably dragging themselves across the finish
Oh
line,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
in those conditions.
And people were just dropping like flies.
Yeah.
So go Felix for finishing 4th. So story number 3 is going to be about Len Tao and Jan Mashiani. They were actually the 2 first Africans to ever participate in the Olympics. They signed up for the marathon like totally on a whim. They just happened to be in St. Louis because they were there for one of the exhibits for the World Fair. So they just decided they were gonna sign up last minute, and they ran it. And Len Tao actually ended up finishing 9th place. And he even would have finished probably a lot better, but he got chased by a pack of wild dogs that ran him off the course a mile.
Oh my god.
And then he got back on course and still finished 9th place. Wild dogs, like let's
Wow.
just throw them into the mix.
I know.
Everyone who ran has like an underdog story.
Yeah.
I know. Oh, and both of them, they showed up to the start line, they had no shoes. And they ran barefoot. They were saying that part of the course was like straight up like rocks that they had to.
Like gravel.
Yeah, like gravel basically. I'm gonna take a quick bite. It just exhausts me hearing these stories.
I know.
It makes me want to chug a bottle of water.
I know.
So is this
I was
Jajangmyeon.
gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, and there were people who like trained and trained and trained and they didn't even finish
I was gonna say.
because it was so bad.
Olympics or something. Okay.
Are you ready for story number 4?
Sure are.
Okay, story number 4 is about American runner Fred Lors. So this guy, he ran and he got to about the 9 or 10 mile mark and he was like, I feel like I'm dying. And he got severe cramps to the point where he was like, I cannot run anymore. And he ended up having to drop out of the race. So he called a car came and got him. And he was riding back to the stadium where the marathon started and ended, right? And on his way, the car breaks down. So now he gets out of the car's broken. He's like, what am I gonna do? And he's like, well, I have to get back to the stadium. I might as well just run the rest of the way, right? He starts running. He runs like it's only a few miles. He gets back to the stadium and he crosses the finish line. And everyone goes crazy and they're like, an American won! Woo! Everyone's like cheering.
Oh my gosh.
He's like, go me! You know, he's taking it all in. He's letting everyone applaud his, his win.
Yeah.
And Alice Roosevelt goes to place the medal over him and someone was like, he cheated! He took a car here! Totally blew up his spot, right? And he's like, oh, guys, I was just kidding. I was just kidding. And they were like, boo! And everyone was so mad at him and he got disqualified. So there were actually a lot of cheaters in 1904 in the Summer Olympics. So if you have time, you should look it up because it's kind of funny. There was like someone who was boxing and he used the name of an actual professional local boxer to get like all hyped up and everything. And
It wasn't him.
yeah, no, it wasn't him. There were a few instances where people cheated, but let me just take one more bite before we do our last story. Or actually,
Can't believe you're still eating. You had 2 eggs and all those noodles.
hungry.
Well, good.
Boy, that was really good.
Yeah.
Are you guys ready to hear about the 1904 Summer Olympic Marathon winner?
Sure.
His name was Thomas Hicks. So Hicks was a trained runner and he started off like the rest of them running through the pain, totally dehydrated, agonizing. You know, he's kind of doubting himself. He's super tired. And he actually happened to have 2 handlers, like assistants that were helping him along the way. And he was like begging them to stop. He's like, I'm so thirsty. I need something to drink. I really want to stop. He was getting cramps. And they're like, no, you can do it. So they gave him egg whites and strychnine, which it's actually a poison, but in very, very low doses. It was actually used as like a performance enhancing drug. So it's like the first time it was reported for like any performance enhancing drugs to be used during the Olympics. But it was in like a little dose. So they hop him up on this stuff and they're like, let's go, you can do it. They shove him back on that dirty, dusty road and he continues on running. And it was after Fred Lors passed him, which of course we know that Fred Lors took a cab most of the way and that's why he was able to pass him, but he didn't know that. So he sees him pass by and again he's like, I need to stop. I really need something to drink. Please just, he was begging his assistants. He's like, please just take me back. I want to be done. And they would not take no for an answer. They forced him to keep running. And they're like, here, let's just give you some more egg whites and we'll give you a little bit more poison. And they gave him some more strychnine and he kept on going. And it got so bad to the point where he was hallucinating. Like he was only like a few miles away from the stadium, but he was like, agonizing and so upset because he thought he was he still had 20 miles to go. But here he is like out of his mind, like, barely picking up his feet. Like
sun-baked brain.
Yeah, I mean he was to the point where as he got closer and closer, he like couldn't feel his feet and so he's like dragging his feet and his legs are barely bending. And as he gets closer, he was ready to collapse. and he ended up crossing the finish line with each of his assistants, like kind of holding him. It was sort of like that.
Yeah.
But
just to make sure he stayed up.
Exactly. Like his feet were still technically on the ground when he crossed the finish line.
That sounds absolutely horrendous.
Just so much pain, and he just like crossed the finish line and he collapsed, and of course he ended up winning because you know, Fred
dude cheated.
Yeah. So once he ended up catching wind like closer to the end that he was disqualified, so he like knew he was like back in it. But he was so out of his mind and delirious, thinking he still had 20 miles ahead of him that, you know, he just wanted to give up still. But luckily his assistants like did not let him quit.
Yeah.
So not only did they give him the strychnine and the egg whites that second time, but they also let him chase it with a little bit of brandy. So when he finally crossed the finish line, he was like overly exhausted, dehydrated. He had lost 8 pounds actually just from during the race. A little bit buzzed, probably slightly poisoned. Couldn't move his legs, delusional, and it said that he actually lost consciousness like right after he crossed the finish line. Wow. And it took like 4 doctors for them to remedy him and get him back to like a lucid state.
Yeah.
So Thomas Hicks ended up winning it. He crossed the finish line at 3 hours and 28 minutes and 53 seconds. As the winner, and I think I don't know if it still is, but it was recorded as like the slowest time in history.
I bet it was.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I couldn't do it in that amount of time, but yeah, for the Olympics. The following year in 1905, Fred Lors and Hicks actually both ran against each other in the Boston Marathon. But Fred Lors did win.
Yeah, the
and
cheater.
He didn't cheat. He just ran the whole way. So they say. Allegedly.
Yeah.
So that was our top 5 stories about the 1904 Summer Olympics in St. Louis. I highly recommend you read a little further into it because that's like the tip of the iceberg. That was just covering the marathon. Never mind everything else. I hope you guys enjoyed this story. It was really fun reading about it. I'm gonna enjoy my Thai iced tea popsicle, so thank you so much for joining us once again. If you enjoyed this story about the 1904 Summer Olympics, then give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to Happy Play, and we will give you a new story next Thursday and the Thursday after that. And if you have any feedback, leave us a comment below. We will see you next time.